webinar today. Okay, thank you for joining. Good day, everyone, and a very warm welcome for interpretation in Spanish, French, or Arabic. Today, click the interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and select your preferred language. To hear only the interpreted audio, choose mute original audio. The instructions can be seen on the screen. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for joining us to our Safe Spaces for Peaceful Coexistence, held in celebration of the International Day of Living Together in Peace, and in conjunction with Safe from Harm Week. The 2026 theme, Living Together in Peace, Building Trust Through Dialogue, Inclusion, and Reconciliation, feels especially timely. In a world marked by uncertainty and strain, it reminds us that peace is not abstract. It is something we actively build through dialogue, inclusion, and reconciliation. As highlighted through the United Nations Pact for the Future and the UNAT initiative and the broader vision of Better Together, 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights, peace grows when we choose to listen, make space for different voices, and protect the dignity of all people. Living together in peace is therefore both a shared responsibility and an urgent task in 2026. My name is Ruhi Rusaba Jahwa Jahan. I am a peace building and dialogue enthusiast with a background in peace and conflict studies from the University of Dhaka. I currently serve as the project liaison for the Ticket to Life project in South Asia, World Scout Bureau Asia Pacific region. I will be your moderator for today's webinar, and I truly look forward to guiding this important and engaging conversation with you all. Living together in peace means embracing our differences, listening with respect, and building unity in diversity. In this webinar, we explore how building safe spaces, physical, social, and digital, can support peaceful coexistence, protect children and young people, and uphold dignity in organizations, and how World Scouting shapes safe space through safeguarding human rights, youth empowerment, and peace building, playing a key role in creating environments where everyone is safe and empowered to engage meaningfully. We are joined by experts from safeguarding human rights and peace building to share insights on creating safe spaces for peace. This is a space for learning and exchange. We encourage you to participate actively by sharing reflections and questions in the Q&A throughout this session. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to our experts joining this webinar. We are joined by Masue Suzuki, Child Protection Officer at the Office of the UN Special Representative of the Secretary General, SRSG, on violence against children and a fellow KAICID member. Welcome. Nefeli Tameli, Non-Formal Learning and Safeguarding Lead from the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, WAGS. Welcome. Andrew J. Boyd is Senior Program Manager of the KAICID International Fellows Program. He is specializing in ecumenism and interreligious dialogue and consultant to the World Organization of the Scout Movement on Interreligious Dialogue. Welcome. And last but not least, we are pleased to welcome Sarah Blackmore, Chief Executive Officer of Keeping Children Safe. Welcome, everyone. Let's just get right to it. To begin, I'd like to start with a broad question to set the scene for our discussion. To Masue Suzuki, from your experience working on child protection within the SDG framework, how does safeguarding contribute to creating safe and inclusive environments for children and young people?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning from here in the United States. And good afternoon to some, probably good evening to many of you who are in Asia. So, first of all, thank you very much on behalf of the Office of the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Violence Against Children. Really, I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to join you in this very important discussion today. And I see a lot of people are joining, and it's wonderful to see you all. Thank you. So I want to start by saying achieving safe, inclusive, and peaceful societies, which is really the core vision of the Sustainable Development Goals as well, on top of what Ruhi just mentioned, some of the frameworks as well. And it depends on ensuring the well-being of protection and of all children because they're mutually reinforcing goals. So for us, we say that there is a specific target in SDGs, which is SDG 16.2, which explicitly calls for ending all forms of violence against children. And there are others that are addressing specific forms of violence. So, speaking about safety, we go to lack of or absence of specific forms of violence. That's where our minds sometimes go to. So, that's the gender-based violence and also harmful traditions, child labor, etc. Those are specific targets of SDGs. But we say all SDGs are interconnected and they all relate to children's lives one way or the other because violence against children and its root causes like poverty, exclusion, inequality, etc., those cut across all of the SDGs. So that's one thing. The SDGs are interlinked goals, and the SDGs echo the independent rights set out in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So again, while the SDGs are all interconnected, it also has it's also connected to these specific rights that are set out in the rights of children, which is the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So, in from these progresses, we can say that children went from being passive recipients of services, now they're individual rights holders with their voices. So we can also turn our imagination to say, well, it doesn't have to go too far. When children are not protected, the consequences are felt across entire societies. For example, violence has long-term impacts on children's physical and mental well-being that limits their education, their future income, therefore their life opportunities. So it highlights really why safeguarding must be a priority for national not only individual well-being, but also community and national, and also global well-being of all. And we also would like to say that children's safety is not just absence of violence, but it is inherently cross-sectoral and requires accountable institutions and integrated, accessible services for all children and caregivers. What does that mean? It includes having birth registration and legal identity, safe and inclusive education from early childhood, and continued education, which Scouts, of course, have a huge role to play. And it also includes online safety and online and digital learning as well. It is also about comprehensive physical, mental, and sexual reproductive health services has to be accessible to all children. And it also has to, because of evolving capacity of children, we also need to be looking at it in a very integrated manner, which is having support for parents and caregivers. And that also has to include sustainable social protection because if the families are not supported, children are not supported. And that also includes child sensitive justice and protection systems that are accessible to all. So for us, child safeguarding means that it's creating the enable conditions for children to participate meaningfully in decision-making processes that are affecting their lives. So enabling and promoting participation of children must include establishing what safety means for them, for children, what they think adults should do to keep them safe, and what they think the role of peer support and child-led action should be. So it must include educating and informing children about their rights. It must include providing safe, inclusive, and empowering pathways for them to provide their inputs in all these processes, as well as to make complaints and report concerns easy and accessible for them. So without strong safeguarding measures, any of these spaces can be unintentionally exposing children to harm and undermining trust in institutions, and it can limit inclusion, especially for those who are in the most vulnerable situations. So being that said, child safeguarding, the safeguarding of their rights and well-being, also contributes to building a culture of peace and lawfulness by engaging and empowering communities, families, young people, and children themselves. Because if they're not on board, we can't be building these peaceful societies together. So child participation is not an option, as mentioned. It's not an extra. It is a must. So children are agents of positive change. This is a part of actually a preamble of the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is clearly a vision that children are agents of change. They are already taking actions, and their engagement strengthens trust in institutions and it reinforces accountability. For us, we also like to emphasize the part that children's access to information is key to their participation. So for us, the Special Representative's Office, we create and produce child-friendly materials. So our SRSG not only reports to the member states in the General Assembly and Human Rights Council, she also shares information, reports to children, and they provide feedback as well. So they have the right to be involved and to be informed as well. That's what we wanted to emphasize. This is important as they stay safe, and those are the rights that are enshrined in the Convention of the Rights of the Child. So I will stop here to. I hope that this provides some framework for our conversation today. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Masui. That was incredible. And thank you so much for that insightful perspective. It's not just the absence of violence, as you say it. It's not enough. It must include justice, protection, allowing children to participate meaningfully, and also establishing safety. Taking what we just heard from Masui, turning to the role of young people themselves, not just as beneficiaries, but as active contributors to positive change. I now go to Andrew. Given your experience as a dialogue practitioner with KaiSeed and as a scout, people can be engaged as leaders in creating conflict prevention and peace building dialogue.
Thank you, Rui. Good afternoon, everyone from Lisbon. I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate that this panel joins a conversation on peace building and dialogue with safeguarding, since both of these rely on the same foundations of trust, of active listening, and the protection of dignity of every person and every participant. I'm also grateful to hear from Masui and see her. We're privileged that she's also one of our KaiSeed fellows in her role, so it's great to hear from her. I appreciate the framing of the question because we do want substantial, not just symbolic, youth participation. It's not enough to invite young voices, we have to equip them. And for participation to be meaningful, it's not just about handing over the microphone, it's about creating conditions where they can participate safely and responsibly. Scouting is very good at this. It's very good at taking scouts, teaching them something, giving them practical experience, letting them reflect on that, and then enabling them to teach. And we have to apply the same skill set and the same pedagogy to dialogue and conflict resolution and peace building. So how? Three suggestions. First, substantial engagement requires intention and it requires structure. Dialogue isn't something that we should just throw someone into the deep end and hope that they can swim. It takes time and attention to build capacity, to help people know how to establish ground rules, common codes of conduct, to practice active and compassionate listening, to become good at facilitating conversation and dialogue, to learn how to manage tensions, how to navigate religious and cultural difference respectfully, how to prevent conflict from escalating or disagreement from turning into disrespect or othering, treating people as completely other. Um, it's helpful to remember that conflict isn't always bad. Uh, Actually, we want to know how to disagree constructively. So one of the most important skills we should be teaching our scouts and our really everyone is how to disagree without attacking or humiliating the other, but respecting them as a person. How do we learn together, which is dialogue, rather than defaulting to an attempt to win, which is debate? How do we build and keep strong relationships of respect and care that allow for difference and disagreement, even on the most important and fundamental truths or beliefs that we hold, um, so that we can learn from each other and develop a deeper understanding of each other? Um, it's also not about finding a way to ignore all of that or to avoid the conflict in the first place, but how to deal with it and how to grow from it together. So many of our CAICEID fellows come to us already as experienced religious leaders, educators, policymakers, or activists. But what we see time and time again is how the practice of dialogue not only expands their view and understanding of others, but deepens and strengthens their own faith, their own identity, their own beliefs, and their own understanding of their duty to God, as Scouting has put it in the past. And we see the same with dialogue for peace trainers and facilitators among the Scouts. I think it's the third piece is always helpful to remember that safe space is not a space absent conflict. We also don't create safe space simply by saying we've created a safe space. We have to be intentional. We have to construct it. Peaceful coexistence is not an absence of difference. Safe space is an environment that we structure where difficult differences can be engaged without people feeling threatened or diminished or humiliated. It's not necessarily an empty space either, where differences are ignored or suppressed. It's not a place where we ask you to leave your identity at the door, because you can't, like with interreligious dialogue, you can't meaningfully engage if we pretend religious identity or diversity doesn't exist. And you can't resolve conflict in a conflict-free zone. And you probably won't learn anything either. So I think if we keep all of these in mind, this is our starting point for how we can engage young people meaningfully in peace building and dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew. It is inspiring. Hello. Yeah, it's inspiring to hear how youth leadership can shape peace building efforts and for the insights into the skills needed to be great peace builders and leaders and your connection to Scouting and CAICEID. Building on this, I'd like to shift us slightly into the realities many young people are facing today, particularly in digital spaces. Next question is to both Sarah and Ophelia. As digital risks continue to evolve, how do you see online disinformation, hate speech, and harmful content affecting social cohesion among children and young people? And also, how does effective prevention look like in practice? Maybe Sarah and Ophelia can take turn into answering this. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for this invitation and convening this important conversation. Good afternoon from the UK and good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the rest of the world. I'm really happy I can see, well, around about 200 people listening online. So it's absolutely wonderful that we've got such a high level of participation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Keeping children safe, the focus of our organisation is on safeguarding, on creating safer organisations and supporting organisations to prevent and respond to all types of harm, including digital harm. But I just want to start by clarifying for a second what I mean when I'm talking about safeguarding. So safeguarding is an integral part of child protection, and if we understand child protection as being preventing and responding to all forms of harm to children and young people, safeguarding is the responsibility of organisations to prevent and respond to all forms of harm against children and young people. All organisations and everyone working in organisations at every single level, from the most senior level to volunteers, has the responsibility for safeguarding. It isn't something that sits with one person in one department, in one country. It's absolutely something that we're all responsible for, and it should be a key part of our mission and the work that we do, in a guiding principle. And the first step to having a really fantastic safeguarding framework in place is understanding where your organisation, through its activities, through its staff, through the work that it does, through its communications and actually its digital footprint, comes into contact with children and young people, and really understanding that in a very deep way. And then looking at any potential risks of harm from that content, from that contact. A really critical part of that is listening to and engaging with children and young people, so you really understand where we are meeting them and what any risks of harm there might be from that. Now, increasingly, this harm is digital harm. It's technology facilitated abuse, which could be all sorts of different things. It could be sexual abuse and exploitation. It could be radicalization. It could be grooming. It could be extremism, and it could be creating polarized debates where we cannot come together and work constructively as humans and carry out our work. So absolutely, preventing digital harm is an absolutely essential part of safeguarding. So in the first place, we all have to recognise where we come into contact with children and young people, understand that that's in the digital space as well, and understand their digital lives, what they are experiencing, and how we are impacting on that. And then the next step is to really look at putting practical prevention and mitigation mechanisms in place. So it might be that we review our policies and procedures. It might be that we are training our staff. It might be that we're doing awareness raising, as we're doing here. It might be that we are putting robust accountability measures in place to prevent harm and to act responsibly if that harm occurs. It's really looking at the whole range of different things we will do within our role in organisations to understand the lives that children and young people are living, how we impact on that in person or online as well. Creating safe spaces where we can have transparent and open conversations is essential. So everybody being able to have these difficult conversations that, you know, we really try to stand in the other person's shoes and we really try to understand them, where if we have disagreements, we can address them in a positive way, where we can speak about difficult things and challenge one another to develop greater understanding, where we can be kind and respectful and non-discriminatory towards each other. So creating that is an essential part of creating a safer organisation. Something else as well, often when we talk about digital harm and we talk about extremism and we talk about division and we talk about children and young people, we're not thinking of our own digital lives as adults and how this is impacting us. We're not necessarily understanding that we too can be drawn into some of these divisive and polarizing debates, attitudes and beliefs. We can too often talk about young people being radicalized and the risk of that and our responsibility to prevent that. But actually we need to take a long, hard look at ourselves and our role within these things as well. And make sure that as part of safeguarding, we are reflective and that we are understanding ourselves in our own behaviour, and that we are reflecting our values and attitudes and beliefs in the way that we do our work and in the way that we engage with children and young people. Emphasising again some of the earlier points, it's absolutely essential and important that children and young people are active participants and are driving these discussions, both in terms of helping, working together to understand safeguarding risks and building mitigations, but also really holding us to account within organisations, understanding what their rights are to safer spaces, and working with us as full partners to make sure that we are modelling our values and our beliefs and our attitudes. We are walking the walk as well as talking the talk, particularly on issues of digital harm and radicalisation and extremism, and that we see it as a shared and joint responsibility. So thank you, and over to you.
And I can continue. Thank you so much again for inviting us. And it's really great also to be here. I'm speaking on behalf of WAGS, the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. And we work a lot in partnership also with the World Organization of Scouting Movement. So thank you so much for involving us as we work in parallel in what we are trying to deliver. So as we are a movement of WAGS, a movement of 11 million girls across 153 countries, for more than a century, our work has started with one simple commitment: put girls at the center. And that lens shapes everything that I would say as well in the panel. So at WAGS, we want to be clear from the outset that digital harm is not gender neutral. So, and also is not age neutral. So girls and young women are disproportionately targeted online through gender disinformation, image-based abuse, AI-generated deepfakes, coordinated harassment, rising misogynistic content that is being algorithmically pushed to young boys and young women. So global research shows that roughly 58% of girls and young women have experienced online harassment, and young women aged 18 to 24 are about 4 times more likely than any other older women to face digital violence. So if we think all of these statistics, which I'm sorry, I don't want to depress us, but just to show a bit of a snapshot of where we are now, in conflict and humanitarian settings, this become even sharper. So girls are already disproportionately affected in conflicts throughout displacement, school disruption, child marriage, and gender-based violence, as you already heard from also the other from our experts. And online, if disinformation and hate compound that adds to that harm. And hate speech can travel faster than aid. Rumors can put a girl, her family, or her community in physical danger. So the effect on social cohesion is profound. And hate and disinformation silence girls, and they make them to self-censor, and they leave platforms, and they pull back from civic life. So they polarize peer groups, they normalize misogyny among boys before they have the tools to question it. They erode the trust between communities, generation, and institutions that young people need in order to belong. So what does effective prevention looks like and in practice for us? So for WAGS, prevention starts with the girl-centered approach. We use the initial real because we want to real safeguarding as well in our practices. So it's relevant, it's engaging, it's accessible, and learner-led. A lot of what you have been echoing as well. Put young people in the center, involve them in the decision. It means 3 things together. So first, building critical citizenship from young age. and we do it through a flagship program. We call it ServeSmart 2.0. And now it has been actually updated to include modules on artificial intelligence and digital well-being for girls and young women to learn and recognize disinformation, hate speech, and manipulation, and able to act on it. So another program, Three Being Me, on body confidence and self-esteem, they build the body confidence and resilience for that harmful content that tries to dismantle actually through the pack. So secondly, a terminology that is actually very familiar with the contents in the scouting and guiding world is non-formal peer-to-peer education in safe and brave spaces, in small groups. We need to train our adult volunteers, you know it very well, and we need to build that trusted relationships. And this is where actually our young people can change behavior, not in a one-off assembly. And third, and not least, systematic accountability. So prevention cannot rest on the shoulders of girls or widely in the children. Platforms, governments, and educators must hold to the standards co-designed with young people themselves, not designed for them. We also have an advocacy, we call it Advocacy for Generation Digital, which is actually a curriculum that is designed to support advocacy action for online safety, digital well-being, and inclusion for digital aspects for girls and young women can actually advocate in those spaces and advocate for systemic change. So investing in girls' digital citizenship is investing actually in social cohesion. So when girls can speak, stay, and lead online, the whole community becomes more resilient.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah and Nafili. Certainly, as Sarah mentioned, identifying where people are engaged in our organizations and taking necessary actions to ensure safeguarding is absolutely essential. And safeguarding is the responsibility of all organizations to respond to all forms of harm. And thank you, Nafili, as well for sharing the data and statistics, as these keep us informed and give us an idea of where immediate intervention is required. Thank you for sharing both, Sarah and Nafili. Building on this conversation, it is also important to consider the broader environments in which these conversations take place, especially where differences in culture, religion, or social norms may exist. In situations where there are cultural, religious, or social differences are present, how can we encourage safe and respectful conversations instead of division? This question is to both, again, to Nafili and Maswe this time. Maybe Nafili can start and then Maswe.
I can continue speaking. So for both the scouting and the guiding world, in many ways, this question is how our movement has been built for. So WAG spans 153 countries, nearly every major faith, dozens of languages, an enormous range of social and cultural realities. And yet our members are united by a shared promise and law. So we have over 100 years of practice in creating brave spaces for young people together, and we sit and we are able to sit with differences and still belong in to one another. So from WAG's side of view, again, three things to make respectful conversations possible across difference. The first thing is our method. Girl Guiding and Girl Scouting is built in small group, peer-led, non-formal education. Girls learning patrols in circles around campfire formats designed so that the relationship becomes before the content. You cannot have a respectful conversation about a hard topic with a stranger in a hostile room. So you can have one with someone who knows your name, has shared the task with you, and trusts that your dignity matters. And the structure does that heavy lifting. The second is what we call safe and brave spaces. So safe because there are clear co-created ground rules, trained facilitators, a real commitment to safeguarding. Brave because we don't avoid disagreements, we facilitate it. Like our programs like Voice Against Violence that work on gender-based violence, Free Being Me that I mentioned before, and global citizenship work intentionally invite girls to bring their full identities in the room, including faith, ethnicity, disability, sexuality, migration status, and many other more, in order to listen across those differences. In our experience, when girls feel safe enough, they will discuss almost anything respectfully. And the third is not to forget about power. Respectful conversation and is not the same as polite. This, I think Andrew mentioned as well. And also politeness can mask exclusion. So genuinely respectful conversations require that voices, most often that those voices that silence girls and young women, minorities, those affected by conflict, those voices who are usually silent to be deliberately centered, not just present. So as we take a girl-centered approach, precisely because our girls hold multiple identities and often see connections that adults miss. So they are a bridge and not a problem to be managed. And these principles translate online too. The same things that work within a guiding meeting, a girl guiding, a girl scouting meeting, work in the digital platform. Clear norms, trained moderators, small enough groups for trust, and content co-design with young people for young people.
And now to Maswe, if you would like to.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think all important things have been said by my colleague Nefili, but perhaps I can also frame it, this question to be answered as Nefili automatically did, to answer how can we encourage children and young people to have respectful conversations. I think it's a clarification that could be added to this question. So I think if Nefeli were to be going into the very sort of practical part, I want to maybe zoom out a bit from this conversation to have the frame of how is this connected to the international frameworks that we might have. So for us, fostering respectful conversation is not only practical skills, but it also contributes to building more peaceful and inclusive society. That is our starting point, I think. And there are three frameworks that could help this discussion and connecting really the overarching theme of today, which is peaceful coexistence, right? So I already discussed about the Convention on the Rights of the Child because it establishes really civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights of every child. And it emphasizes their right to protection, development, participation. It's important. This is the key to this question, and also survival. Another frame that I want to add is the United Nations culture of peace. This emphasizes values such as dialogue, mutual respect, and understanding nonviolence, inclusion, and human rights, to which education is really a key element for this framework. The other one, we already talked about this, but I want to go back to Sustainable Development Goals, particularly on SDG 4 on education, and that includes global citizenship. Nefeli just discussed about this. 5 is gender, 10 is equality. We talked about power dynamic as well, and peaceful and inclusive and just society, which is SDG 16. So this really reinforces the importance of inclusion, equality, and peaceful societies. These are key elements from the SDGs that we can take a look at. So then, if those are the frame that we can look at, I think it's important to see that your day-to-day work activities within the Scouts framework are also connected to these things that are discussed perhaps in the corridors of buildings that are in different cities in different countries. Here, of course, in New York as well. CAICID is located in Portugal. So really to have this connection, the dynamic, I think it's important for young people as well, that what we're doing today here is really contributing or implementing these larger legal framework as well. So I think I want to focus on three more practical things, which might be a little bit repeating, but I think it's important. Creating safe and inclusive spaces for all. And this means accessibility in physical spaces. Are we paying attention to the details to make sure that everyone feels valued and welcomed, respected? And we discussed again earlier today about digital environment. So this safe and inclusive space has to expand not only in the physical presence, but in the online spaces as well. There's a set of safeguarding to be considered for that space, and there are some guides that are available already. We also need to think about who is in the room and who is not in the room, more importantly. Are we including everyone that are relevant to the conversation, the topic that we're covering? Though we have to pay attention that those who are in a marginalized situation due to social, economic, or cultural differences, are they included? We have to practice active listening. We also have to ask ourselves and set up rules about how to express disagreements respectively. I think both Nefili and Andrew talked about this. How do we address or how do we express disagreements in a respectful manner? I think to young people, we often say starting statements, I statements are important. And then to children and young people as leaders, we have to see them as leaders. They're already taking actions. They are already speaking up, bringing positive changes in their communities, promoting inclusion, equality, respect. So encourage them and support their leadership and creativity in this journey. And for this, for our work for our office, amplifying children's voices and action is an important part of our office's priority. So we want to hear from children and we collect their actions and publish them on our website as Children's Action Map as well. So we hope to hear from some of the examples that you might know from your communities today as well. And then let's turn into what is the role that adults have to play in this journey. They have to be supporting children's participation, agency, and leadership. We have to encourage children and young people's curiosity about different cultures, religions, and identities. So this is stereotyping biases. We have to keep ourselves in check, led by their curiosity and genuine wanting to learn from one another. And we can use storytelling and cultural activities to build appreciation for diversity. And I think we also need to be mindful of the power dynamic, as Nafili already mentioned, so I won't go into that. And then I also want to point out that, you know, all these elements that we've discussed so far, that this can be found in the Scouts policy on safe from harm, because by grounding our work in the internal policy like this, such as this, I'm sure Girl Scouts will probably have something similar to guide their members with. I think what I am only saying is that these already existing internal frameworks and guidelines, they are actually agreeing with the international standards like Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Culture of Peace, and the SDGs. So you're not only guiding children and young people to turn differences into opportunities for learning, connection, and mutual respect. This is also laying the foundation for building peaceful, inclusive, and just societies and communities at large. So there, I will stop here. Thank you. Over to you.
Amazing discussion. Thank you so much, both Nefeli and Masue. The mention of dialogue, as well as the conventions, the frameworks, these are valuable resources, and these exist at the heart of peaceful coexistence and are essential. Along with the practical actions, as Masue and Nefeli mentioned. So Okay, so now let us move into, as we were discussing, to a more practical action at the organizational level. I think we've touched upon this theme a little, but yeah, finally to bring this into the organizational scouting context, I'd like to end with a forward-looking question. My next question is to both Sarah and to Andrew. In your perspective, what practical actions can National Scout organizations take to ensure safe spaces for young people to coexist peacefully within their communities? And my request to participants as well is to use the Q&A function to, if you have any questions to our panelists, to use that, and we will come back to you at the end of our webinar. So coming back to Sarah and Andrew, with my question.
Andrew, please.
Would you like to go first? Yeah.
Okay. I'll begin. Practical actions. Prioritize safeguarding. Be a safe organisation. Make it central to your mission. Don't regard it as a boring tick box thing that we just have to do. This is a way of institutionalising children's rights, safety, and dignity. This is absolutely critical. Listen to young people, involve them in understanding safeguarding risks, involve them in developing your safeguarding measures, create ways that we can hold each other to account on building safer organisations, model these things ourselves as adults. In the way that we speak, in the way that we engage with each other, in what we prioritize and what we focus on, make sure that they can really see us doing it and that they can hold us to account very, very clearly if we fall short on any of that, and be open to that, be curious, and really listen and learn to children and young people as leaders. That will help us create the safer institutions, the safer organisations that we really need to be able to hold those spaces for the safer conversations that we can then expand out into the world. I love the comment of relationship before topic. I think that's an absolutely wonderful way of putting in, and we need to build those connections, and we need to build that trust, and we need to build that institutionalization of children's dignity, rights, and safety through safeguarding. Thank you. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Sarah. It's been really helpful and important hearing from experts like Sarah on safeguarding, because safeguarding is such an important prerequisite for creating space where dialogue is even possible, and adopting a dialogical way of thinking automatically includes necessarily safeguarding in this approach. So you can't have the one without the other. I really appreciate hearing that. And that idea of relationship before topic. I heard once the phrase, it was described as the dialogue of truth. The dialogue of love has to precede the dialogue of truth. So before we can discuss the really difficult topics, we have to know and love one another and be safe for one another. I have three practical suggestions for the National Scout organizations. And the first is to shift mindset if necessary, to try and design and counter not just events. As important as those events are, because we know for a lot of our young people, their first experience of somebody from another country or who speaks another language or of another religion or culture probably comes from one of these regional or global Scout events that they may attend, like the Scout Moots that some of my team was at. That I was there in Portugal last summer, about 7,500 young adults from nearly 120 countries. This is a great opportunity to expose people to diversity, to encounter each other, and the scale was just remarkable. But we also keep in mind that proximity or doing something in common together alone doesn't necessarily create dialogue. And so we add the intentionality. to bring that proximity, that diversity together into a conversation. And so at a lot of Scouts events, you already have the faith and belief zone at Jamboree or at other events, which creates a strong foundation. And the small next step, where it isn't already there, is to clearly add dialogue for peace or interreligious dialogue activity. Because we risk, if we have the proximity and the mixing and the diversity without intentionality of engaging it, that can sometimes reinforce stereotypes rather than help people overcome them. And this is an ascent that National Scout organizations have strength about this regular, repeated contact with our young people over years, usually. And this is exactly the condition needed for developing strong dialogue relationships, strong trust building, and a genuine safe space over time. So this is how dialogue becomes a way of life and not just an activity. And it's important that when we're doing this, we co-create with the young people and with the full diversity of religions or cultures that we want to see represented in among the participants. I think this is a good rule for any kind of planning, but especially when we're talking about dialogue. The second thing I would ask the NSOs is to train your trainers, not just your Scouts. It's very practically, first step is to invest in training for dialogue facilitation and training trainers among your leaders, national, local. If an adult volunteer or a young adult leader doesn't know how to handle a moment where tension or conflict surfaces, if they shut it down or they deflect or they advance a stereotype or they even escalate it, then you don't have a safe space, you have a suppressed one. So if our adult leaders aren't able to navigate difference respectfully, then our youth may not be able to either. About a decade ago, for Kaisid, our relationship with WUSM is one of our oldest partners. And about a decade ago, we helped create this Dialogue for Peace program. And through the years since, also added an interreligious dialogue activity badge, a guide for dialogue ambassadors, training manuals for trainers and facilitators. These are all ready with WUSM now for adoption in your NSOs. And a lot of places have done so. A lot of places have yet to do so. And so this is one thing very easily that if NSOs were to adopt Dialogue for Peace program, this is something that I would be very happy to walk away from the seminar knowing, because it's something that exists. We know it works. It's ready to use. And I say this not just coming from Kaisid's staff, but I was a fellow myself several years ago before I joined the staff, and I've been involved in scouting since I was 11 years old. So I have personal experience and appreciation for the way that scouting provides these opportunities and that dialogue really transforms people by engaging in it. And so I'm really pleased to see how thoroughly scouting on the global level has embraced dialogue as part of its entire educational approach. And then just a quick final point is that to remember that diversity is a resource, not a challenge, even and if not especially when we talk about religion and cultural diversity. This is, again, scouting knows this well in its bones and guiding as well. But what we see is that this diversity is a resource for peace building, despite what we sometimes understand as a stereotype that religion can only lead to conflict. There's a response that we often hear in dialogue circles. If you don't want religion to be part of the problem, you have to make sure it's part of the solution. And the same would go for culture and any other aspect of our identity as well. So the goal in dialogue is not to erase differences, but to build relationships that are strong enough to live with difference peacefully and to learn from each other. So in our program, we've trained 550 plus fellows from 100 countries over the last decade. And we've seen firsthand that when people are given the tools to engage this difference constructively and stop experiencing it as a threat or an oddity, when they start seeing the other as a friend or a colleague, that's the thing that we should all be building towards. So I guess if I summarize it all, I would say the bottom line is this: my one piece of advice is not to wait for conflict to arise, to then engage in dialogue, but to build the habits for dialogue before there's any conflict that needs to resolve. So thank you.
Wonderfully summarized. Thank you so much, both. Right now, I think we can get into the Q&As. I see a lot of questions in the Q&A section, and I can see that there are some very similar questions, so we will be asking them together, and whoever wants to take on any questions, you can just tell me. So the first question I can see is, how can schools apply the safe from harm policy and create a safer environment for students or scouts? And tying that question to another question that we have is, how can educational institutions serve as transformative spaces for conflict prevention and peace building? So if Nifeli were to answer these both in short, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. So within the scouting movement, but also in the Girl Guiding and Girl Scouting movement, we do have units within the schools. So how we are looking as well is how we apply this we safe from harm, for our case, safeguarding, and also this space for everyone for our members to grow and learn. In order for it to be brave, as we said, participatory, and in our case, girl-centered. So we need to see it in different areas, in different spaces. So first of all, in many cases within those schools, the teachers become also the unit leaders. But although it's involuntary in spirit, even when the setting is not, so it's important that if attendance is encouraged or normalized by school, the young people and the girls, how they experience how they come to guiding and scouting should be at their own choice. And what they do, how they lead it, and what they try. So this teacher leader authority in the classroom should soften into a facilitator's behavior in the unit. And then youth center, girl center, not curriculums led. So it's the guiding, the scouting method is your anchor. Not like the school syllabus in that setting. So school-based units can complement formal education and create this relevant, exciting, accessible, learner-led learning experience. So the scouts and the guides will stay in the center and not be to reshape and in order to cover like curriculum gaps. And also what we call brave spaces, but also safe spaces, it needs to be across the two roles. So girls and young people may find it harder to take risks, express disagreements, or try new identities in a space that is led by someone who also grades them, who also disciplines them at school. So building an intentional practice where co-facilitation, peer leadership, rotating roles, create that psychological distance from the classroom and the classroom hierarchy when you are in that unit. And also understanding that some topics in a co-ed space might need to be addressed as you are delivering activities also like separately. So to run some activities with the boys, run some activities with the girls, or in order to explore the topic with their own peers and then come back as a group in the plenary. So be intentional in your facilitation and how you are dedicate those moments for learning.
Thank you, Nefeli. Would anybody else like to add to that? Sarah, did you unmute? Oh, no, okay. Never mind. Okay, so we are going to our next question, which is from Richard Rubio from the Philippines. I see that it is already answered in the chat, but I would like to ask this question to our panelists. Anyway, so how can organizations evaluate the effectiveness of their safeguarding mechanisms beyond compliance-based approaches? I think we would like to hear from different organizational perspectives for this question. Maybe Mas answer, Sarah.
I could
Sure.
make a contribution.
Yeah.
I think we need to move well away from seeing safeguarding as compliance and much more about building a culture where we prioritise children's safety, dignity and rights. Some of the policies, procedures, the training, the things that we have in place are part of doing that, but it's actually part of how we build organisations that have that as a goal. One thing that is incredibly important is to really find mechanisms to listen to children and young people about whether they feel safe, whether they are safe, and whether the safeguarding measures really do work for them as well. Some of the things that we think when we're doing the right thing as adults don't necessarily result in outcomes that are viewed as positive by children and young people. So it's a reiteration, I think, of something that we are all saying. It's about listening to children and young people and taking those concerns really, really seriously, related to safeguarding risk, but also related to co-designing safeguarding measures and evaluating them and evaluating us on what we're doing as well. So it isn't a case of I have my policy now, I've done my training now, okay, I forget about it. It's how we live our values.
Right. Thank you so much, Sarah. Would anybody else like to add to that? Okay. Okay, so we can move on to our next question. It is about safety in our digital spaces. So the question is, what are some practical skills of safeguarding young people from online or cyberbullying? Safeguarding young people from online or cyberbullying. Hence, almost every child is now exposed to use of digital tools without a capable adult's guidance. Yeah. Question to the floor. Whoever wants to get. Nefeli, yeah, thank you.
It's something that we discussed also earlier today. So I think we see that technology is in the lives of very young ages. So making sure that it is used in a way that they are trained from early age, understand the risk, but also a lot of what we do as well, especially with young people, if we are organizing an activity online, we risk assess together. So we actually work with them in order to identify and see if this happens, what will be, how we mitigate that risk. So doing also risk assessments together, being able to use tools, close groups, Zoom meetings with registration, like things that look simple, but again, we have to be very, very meticulous in how we work with young people. And then within our setting, the scouting and the guiding world, there are toolkits, and also beyond that, you can find lots of information of ways that you can work with young people to understand, to protect themselves. But also we also realize that our leaders, because they are different ages across this they are not also, maybe you have young people being more techy than the older leaders. So for example, we're doing a challenge, an online challenge, and actually the 14-year-olds were training the leaders in how to use this challenge that we were doing. So there is also that, how that intergenerational learning can happen, and how you set that framework with the resources, the very strict guidance. And as organizations as well is how we demonstrate that. So also how we let those practices into online space. So one of those things is, when we are organizing events, how we also demonstrate that, making sure that how we invite participants, how the participants interact. We cannot unpack very difficult topics and just have like very rooms without facilitation, and this is where harm can happen. Share links online, like some things that sound basic but is also very important for a line of work.
Yeah, I'd like to also add that our office has some publications on this particular topic that can be shared with children and young people, including one particularly about safeguarding children in online event spaces. I think that's very important to have. So I just dropped them in the chat. I hope that's helpful in your discussions internally. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we have some resources in our chat. Please check them out. And I think that our next question is because we have so many partners present here today. I think that's why it's relevant. And also Scouts would like to know. So the question is, how can grassroots Scout leaders like us tap into international funding opportunities such as the Messengers of Peace Support Fund, or establish strategic partnerships with global organizations to sustain and scale these peace building activities? So this is open to all, and I would like for all of you to answer in your own capacities. Thank you. Anybody would like to go first?
I can
Sarah.
say. So you are a member of the Keeping Children Safe Global Network, everyone here. And we have a whole range of free resources, webinars, events, conferences to which I invite you all. They're in English, Spanish, and French. If you're interested, please take a look at our website, sign up for our newsletter, and get more involved in the network. There are all sorts of opportunities that we have. Just reach out to us because we are here to support you.
Thank you,
I
Sarah.
can also drop some links on the chat. I think there's a particular question about the Messenger for Peace. Unfortunately, I do not know that. How to answer that question. It's outside of our office's scope, but yeah, there are online resources available. We collaborate on events like this to learn from each other. I think that's very important as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Masri.
I don't mind adding a couple things. I mean, similarly, KSEED offers free online e-learning opportunities open to anyone that can be engaged, that address dialogue from a number of different perspectives and topics and areas of concern. And while our staff is relatively small, we're about 45 people, almost all based here in Lisbon, Portugal. Our work around the world puts us in partnership with a number of governments, with intergovernmental organizations. And we have, I mentioned already, approaching 600 fellows in over 100 countries who can and have been trainer resources and expert resources to national scout organizations. And so we can help with connections to be made at a local or regional level that might tap into some resources that would be helpful as well.
Thank you so much for sharing all these resources. Dear participants, please make sure to check them all out. And also, thank you so much for your questions. Nifeli, would you like to add to this, or we can move on to our next question? Right, yeah, okay. Thank you so much. Yes, as we were saying, there are a bunch of resources from different organizations and the panelists that they have shared their different online resources, trainings in the group chat. Please make sure to check them all out. And yeah, so the next question, I don't know who to ask. Maybe Masri can answer, but on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most dangerous, what are the top 3 dangers facing our children right now? And in your opinion, are we focusing too much on awareness? Masri can answer, and then if anybody wants to add to that, we can.
Sure. I don't think I can rank any particular dangers because I think it depends on where you are, your situations are. But I would say though that building awareness is really key on any situations. So in that sense, I think that is um, there's not such thing as having too much focus on awareness. But of course, there has to be prevention is raising awareness, then it has to be addressed practically as well. So I think in the safeguarding conversation, one thing that maybe we have not discussed so much today is having a connection with what's available in the local reality. So in many cities and towns, there are safeguarding or child protection system that is already available. So being aware of that and having the signpost or the awareness to connect as necessary to those services is probably also something that we could add as well. Thank you.
Certainly, there can never be too much awareness, and I think it's a stepping stone in any preventive measure. Awareness, yeah, is very important and essential. Would anybody else like to add to it, or we can move on to the next question? We have, I think, the last question. Yes. The last question is, what guidance can World Scouting give to young Scout leaders like me in balancing strict Scouting policies with empathy, understanding, and emotional maturity in real life situation? And this was directed to Andrew. If you'd like to answer, and maybe Nefeli can add to it.
The question was, how do we balance strict policies with empathy?
Strict Scouting policies with empathy, understanding, and emotional maturity in real life situations.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. We have to do that. The policies, especially strict ones, especially around safeguarding, are there for a really good reason. And so we want to honor them, we want to keep them. But obviously we have to engage with empathy. We have to engage people. And I think this is where the importance of the long-standing relationship building and the trust building really comes through, because good scout leaders will know the scouts that they're working with. We know what their needs are. It's we have to balance the importance of providing somebody that is safe to talk to, without losing the fact that we have to be sure that they are safe, in fact, and not just feeling safe. I mean, so I think others can speak even more directly to that, but from our perspective, the importance goes back to genuinely how carefully do we construct safe space, including physically, including spiritually, including emotionally, including psychologically, and doing it intentionally and making sure that everybody helps us create that space, because everybody who helps create the space will be more proactive in protecting that space. And so that's my insight, but I'd be happy to hear from the other panelists.
Yeah, and I think I just want to add that how we are looking also and how we're delivering our method is very much across the two, like across our joint movement, is looking at the whole person development. So the whole person development is all about like how we physically, spiritually, emotionally, on all of these aspects develop as persons. So And within Girl Guiding and Girl Scouting, we have been reviewing how we deliver quality learning. So eventually our organizations are a space where members are growing and learning. So how, and in order to grow and learn, is we're coming back, and in that framework, we actually put a brave space to grow and learn, because actually in how we building this environment is very interlinked in how we are forming as people and how we are learning. So these are not two different things, to echo what Andrew says. Like, we cannot have, you have a safe space without having people respecting and listening to each other and develop empathy. And we're doing that through the method and how we actually interconnect and interact in order to do that. So I think, just as I said, it's just that, and it's not only for the young people, it's how we are also as adults, and we are doing that. So for that framework that we are presenting, we are bringing both the learning and the for young people and the adults join, because we see it as one whole. Even as adults, we still continue to grow and learn, and how we facilitate, and we still need to show, to be empathetic, and we need to also create, like, to develop as people ourselves. So it needs practice, and it needs also to be able to engage in those difficult conversations. And when you come, and all of our movement is built on relationships. So when are these relationships strong and built on trust? When the foundation is strong, I think you can have all of these beautiful moments of learning, basically, in a safe space.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nefeli. If does anybody else wants to add? If not, we are at the very end of our webinar. We have answered quite a lot of questions, and I thank our panelists for that, and also a huge thank you to the participants who has asked us these amazing questions and who has opened the door for these dialogue among our panelists. And I hope you enjoyed and got your answers from all our panelists and our experts. Thank you so much for joining today. So as we are at the very end, I would like to welcome our panelists for one last time. I want to hear from them in one simple action or message on how can each of us contribute protecting children and building peaceful, respectful communities. And I know we have shared all throughout our discussions today, but in very short, all of you could, if you could share how you would do that in our communities. I can start with Andrew, because he's the first on my screen. Yeah.
I would say commit to learning how to listen, not in order to respond, but in order to understand. And that's step one.
Thank you, Andrew. Next on my screen is Nefeli.
Well, for me, yeah, specifically for keeping girls and young women, but of course, young people at the center of every safeguarding digital and social coherence for response. And when they are safe, heard, and leading, everyone is safer.
Thank you so much. Maswe.
Hi, thank you. I want to emphasize the importance of education. And education is not only for children. We, as adults, we continue to learn as well. So that education on both directions will help keep children safe. Thank you.
And Sarah.
I would say model the attitudes, values, and behaviours you would like to see in the world, and use as your guiding light what you are doing to protect and promote the dignity, safety, and rights of children and young people.
That is wonderful. And to the participants, we encourage you to take these reflections forward and carry them into your work and daily lives as we celebrate the International Day of Living Together in Peace today. And remember these as your call to action as well. Use your voice responsibly, choose kindness and empathy, build bridges, not division. Thank you so much to all our special guests for your valuable insights and to everyone joining us today for our engagement and commitment to building safer and more peaceful communities. Let us continue to remember the importance of creating a safe space for peaceful coexistence, where every voice is respected and every person feels included. Together, we can make peace not just an idea, but a lived reality. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists and the people in the background as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.